podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion, with me, your host, Stephen Wallis. After only 11 days of cricket, Australia retained the Ashes with victory in the third test in Adelaide. And to look back at the action, a variety of guests have joined me in the Ashes, the final say. 3 former test cricketers, 2 current internationals, journalists, authors and a radio presenter spread across 5 parts give us their reaction to Australia's 4-1 series victory. There is no better guest to open the series than Rick McCosker, the former Australian batter who made his test debut against England in Sydney in January 1975. Hello Rick, welcome back to the show to talk about the Ashes.
Hello Stephen, good to be with you again.
Now, you said, Rick, that England had a chance, would win a test, but you confidently thought that Australia would win the series and said Australia would be too good. You were quite accurate.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure about a 4-1 result, but I thought it might have been at least a 3-1 result. But I thought that, I thought that England would win a test, but and I didn't think they would win any more than one. But I thought over a 5-test period, often there's a washout, but there wasn't. So finished up 4-1.
You don't think 4-1 was a fair reflection then?
To a certain extent, I do. I think England's team let Australia off the hook a bit, so it probably shouldn't have been 4-1. I think England let themselves down on a number of occasions, and so I think 4-1 probably flattered Australia a little bit.
Just going back on what you said in the previous episode, you thought England would struggle if their top 3 or 4 batsmen didn't get runs.
Yep.
Joe Root did, but the others didn't.
That's right. Yeah, Joe, in Australia, we've got an immense amount of respect for Joe Root as a player, and that was borne out in this series. But he badly needed some regular support, which he didn't get. So it would have been different, I think, if 2 or 3 of the other early batsmen had got hundreds. That would have made a difference, but they didn't. So Root had to do it all by himself.
But you must have been impressed with the, as some people have coined, the Australian second string attack.
Yeah, it was to a certain extent. Yeah, and I think they, under the circumstances, I think they did pretty well. And in the long run, I guess 4-1 was a good indication of how the so-called second string came through under when it was necessary. But you can't really call them second string because really they are in their own right as good as any fast bowling group in the world. It's just that 2 or 3 of them haven't had an opportunity because of the big 3 that were in front of them, and so this was an opportunity for 2 or 3 of them to produce, and they did. And so that was good from an Australian cricket point of view.
Yeah, Scott Boland, I've checked his record. He's now got just over 80 wickets for 18. You could hardly call him second string.
Not anymore. No, and Michael Nisa, I would think that he would probably get a starting jumper pretty much in any with any test playing country in the world. But so it was from that point of view, it was a pretty good effort because there was a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure on Mitchell Starc, and he just had a wonderful series. So, but he got the support from the other guys, and so that, to a certain extent, was one of the differences in the two teams.
As a former Test opener, what did you make to the openers on both sides?
Disappointing, all of them, except of course Travis Head. But to be honest, I don't regard Travis Head as a long-term opener. I don't think that's his position, even though he had a wonderful series. I can understand why he was in. He wanted to open, understand the reasons why he did, and it was very important that he did in the long run and that he succeeded. But in the long term, I would regard him as our either 4 or 5 middle order batsmen. And Australian cricket really desperately needs to find 2 long-term opening batsmen, younger players who we could expect to be around for the next 8 or 10 years and to form a partnership. And I don't believe that we can continue to try and fill the gaps. So they need to settle on a couple, and whoever that is, I'm not quite sure at the moment, but they need to settle on 2 openers and stick with them.
You don't think Travis Head is the new David Warner then? No.
I I don't. I just think he's more value to the team down in 5. But having said that, I mean, what I said before, I could understand why, because we didn't have 2 established openers, and he volunteered to step in, and because of the talent that he has, he was able to make it a winner for him and for the team, and it worked out very well. But it doesn't necessarily say that's the way it should be long term.
You think he could struggle then if he came to England on wickets that move around in 2027?
I do. Yep. And maybe against a very strong South African attack on wickets that were doing a bit. I think his talent would be wasted to a certain extent trying to face the new ball. Got away with it this series, partly because I don't think the English fast bowlers, probably with the exception of Stokes, probably bowled as well as what they could have or what was anticipated they would. And so that with Travis Head opening the batting, I think that worked from an Australian point of view, and it probably shouldn't have.
What did you make then of the England bowling attack with 3 injuries? Our leading bowler being
Again,
Bryden Cast with 22 wickets.
yeah, he did a lot of the heavy work, and he was obviously Stokes' go-to man, and at times he bowled very well, but at times his fast bowling wasn't really up to test standard, and he was found out a bit. But having said that, he did get 20 odd wickets, and that's to his credit, and he kept going and he kept working hard, and so I think apart from Stokes, he was the pick of the bowlers.
Turning to the England openers, and they only had one stand of over 50. I think that was at Melbourne.
Yeah, as I said before about the openers, disappointing, and I think they were found out a little, and mainly because of their tactics, the way they wanted to try and get on top from ball 1. That can work sometimes, but very difficult to expect that it's going to work every or even most innings in a 5 test series, and that proved the case. So, I think both have obviously got talent and very, very talented players, but I think their approach in a 5 test Ashes series probably wasn't quite the right one, and I think the results were borne out.
A lot was made over here and on the television about, particularly in the first 2 tests at Brisbane and Perth, with England trying to play at the drive on the up.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to do that on a lot of Australian wickets, and that's where our fast bowlers, born and raised on those sort of wickets, know how to bowl on those wickets, and so I think the the opening batsmen in particular were the disappointing was partly to do with um, the pre-Ashes series hype, particularly in the media, and there was so much hype. I don't know what it was like in England, but in Australia there was a lot, and put a lot of pressure on all of the players. Some responded, and some didn't. So I don't think that helped the visiting side either.
No, I often wonder that because I was at the Perth, Brisbane, and Adelaide test. But the first day at Perth, when 19 wickets fell,
Yeah,
everyone seemed. Was it because everyone was so hyped up on that first day of the series?
yeah, and that partly could have been the case because I remember on the first day of the centenary test in Melbourne in 1977, because there was a similarity there because there was so much hype to that match, and we all went into it, and everyone was so tense and nervous and wanting to do well and probably trying too hard, and so on that, a lot of wickets fell on the first day and the second day of that match as well, and I think that was a pretty similar situation.
And Ben Duckett, obviously, it's the way he plays. He doesn't leave the ball very often. But can that
Yeah.
be successful in Australia with those bouncier wickets?
Not really. And I think, and this gets not only to Ben Duckett, but a few and few of the Australian players as well, that falling back on the statement that this is the way we play, I don't think that works in a five test Ashes series. And I think it's to a certain extent as a bit of a get out statement. Um, and so, so it's when you're batting in a five test Ashes series, um, there's more to just the batting the way that I had it in a T20 or a limited over. It's a um, different way of batting, and particularly in Australia against a good bowling attack, you've got to have a bit more patience, and you've got to um, graft a bit more. And in Adelaide, Ben Stokes and Jacks, they batted out quite some time, and that was good Ashes Test match batting. And there was some also in the Sydney Test, but the other three tests, um, there was not a lot of good tough Test match batting.
I suppose as a batsman and during a five test series, a bowler can work you out more and know the things that you do wrong
Yeah,
and sort of highlight
yeah,
those things. And you've got to adapt to those over a
yeah,
series.
absolutely. If you want to play every match in the series, you've got to do something about it. You've got to work something out. And this is why and where Steve Smith is so good and has been so good, because he comes up with answers. He works things out and better than most. And I mean, and I would say, Joe Root probably, works on the same theory as well. But that's what makes them a great batsmen and not just good ones. And and that's what you have to do. A bowler will work you out, and so you've got to work out, well, how do I, what do I do now to make sure that he doesn't get me out that way? I've got to compensate for that. So, and and I don't think that happened. Certainly from the two openers, and probably your number three as well. Um, and I think that they really changed their approach and changed the way they played. And so the Aussie bowlers, were able to work them out and under Australian conditions.
But is that down to the player or is that down to the coaching to highlight those things during a series?
Well, initially the responsibility is the player. When you play, when you've got to take responsibility. Otherwise, why are you in the team? And there's nothing much the coach can do, and the coach can't go out and bat for you. You've got to work it out yourself. And if you can't work it out yourself, well, then and a coach can only do so much, but you've got to do the rest of it.
And did you think that England came into the series underprepared as well?
I do, definitely do, Stephen. And that's, I think the England team let themselves down, and I'm not sure what the reason for that was, whether it was administration or whether it was by their own um, choice that they did what they did or didn't get more preparation. But certainly when you come to Australia with a large percentage of the England team hadn't played a Test series here in Australia before, then it's so important that you come across and play at least a couple of games, and preferably a 4-day game against stateside, which is what the England side used to do, and either preferably to play in either Perth or Brisbane, because those two Test match wickets would be so much different, more different than the other three here in Australia to what the English players have been used to. And it's not just the batsmen, it's the bowlers as well. There's ways of bowling here which are different to the way they bowl in England.
Because as in 1974-75, although you weren't playing at the beginning of that series, England lost the first two tests in that series at Brisbane and Perth. And how difficult then, or is it impossible then, to come back in Australia when you're 2-0 down?
Yeah, very, very difficult. Very difficult. And particularly, when you're a touring side and you've got limited numbers within your squad. So there's not much you can do. You've got to stick with the players that you've got. I know, with this particular Test series, the team brought in the young left-hander at the end, and he shows a lot of promise, and I think he'll be a good future Test player. But that was probably a bit too little, too late for this particular series. But yes, once you get behind like that, it's very difficult to get back in the race, and that's why it was so important that England should have won that first Test in Perth. They had an opportunity, and that was vital. The whole series could have changed had they won that Test match, and they had an opportunity.
Yes, because being out there at the newspapers on the morning of day two, the final day in Perth, were quite critical of the Australian side. So the whole series could have changed if England had won that match.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And there were times, as I said before, that the batting on both sides was a bit disappointing at times, and with the Australian team as well. And there were times in probably at least two or three of the Test matches where the Australian batting side let their team down by not by getting in a good position but not going on with it. And in a Test series, particularly an Ashes series, over 5 tests, if you're going to get in a good winning position, you never let the opposition back in. And it happened, and the Australian batsmen were guilty of that as well as England were.
What are your thoughts on two-day Test matches? Can't be good for Test cricket.
No, not a big rap. But to me, it's obvious that that this is a result of so much 2020 cricket, because if you analyse a lot of the dismissals in not only those two-day Test matches, but in some of the others, a lot of dismissals, you can see the influence of T20 cricket, and you're not going to win a 5 Test series by continuing to use that as an excuse that that's the way I normally play. Um, there's got to be more to it in a 5 test series.
One player we haven't mentioned, but I think we should mention is your wicket keeper, Alex Carey. He had an outstanding series.
He did, yeah. And I had three of our guys who really performed over and above their ability, and that was obviously Head and Alex Carey and Mitchell Stark. They were the three of the England team. The two, to my opinion, was Stokes and Roots. But they played really well without a lot of support. But yeah, getting back to what you said, Alex Carey had a brilliant series, and everything that he did was good. I know he's not the most favoured person from a English cricket point of view for various reasons, but they have to respect his ability in this particular Test series.
Well, his standing up to the wicket made a massive difference, I think, to the bowling of
Yeah,
Boland and Nisa.
it did, and it is something that from a batsman's point of view, um, it is, and it's something that you don't often experience. When you do, it is something new, and if there's something new happening, it does affect how you play to a certain extent, and particularly the English batsmen who wanted to stand out of the crease or even start walking down the crease. It did affect your style of batting and your mentality of how do I deal with this. And so it's just something else to think about. And so from that point of view, it was really well done by Alex and the Australian team.
Because those two bowlers are not slow and it's to be standing up
No,
to.
yeah, yeah. Some of the glove work was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and dangerous to a certain extent. Um, but yes, they need lot of courage and a lot of trust in the bowlers and a lot of trust in the bounce of the wicket. So and obviously very good reflexes, which he has.
But those two bowlers in particular have played cricket for a very long time. They're very experienced. They've played, well, Michael Nisa has played a lot in England as well. So they've
Yep,
a lot of
yep,
overs in their legs, haven't they?
yep, absolutely. And that was borne out. They're experienced bowlers, and the reason that they've only got the many test match wickets that they have already is because they've been behind three of the best fast bowlers in world cricket, and for a long time. So it's been tough for them, but they will have an opportunity now. They've proved that they can do it. So there'll be more and more opportunities.
You probably went to the best Test match cricket of the series at Sydney.
Yeah, I was a bit concerned that I had invitations to go to day two. I wasn't worried about that one, but day four.
Well,
But
they're
never
always
in
in
doubt
doubt
it
day
was.
four, aren't they?
Yeah, but it was a good test match. I enjoyed it and was enjoyed by the big crowds that were there. And so yeah, I went second day and the fourth day, and they were good. There's some really good cricket, and yeah, we saw some good batting and some good bowling, and some good entertainment again by the Barmy Army. They are just absolutely brilliant. They are. But by the fifth test, I think they were getting a little bit weary. Um, weren't quite as vocal as they had been earlier on in the series, but um, yeah, just yeah, what a wonderful part of Ashes cricket they are.
Well, I know Simon Finch, the Barmy Army trumpeter. I met him when I was out there, and he's been on the podcast two or three times. And how he keeps going for all 5 tests playing
Yeah,
that trumpet, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Got me beat, and also the guy. who dresses as Charlie Chaplin, and they're 35 degrees heat, and he's there all day, every day. Yeah, so yeah, well done those guys. It was brilliant.
So you saw Joe Root complete his 100, or he got 160, didn't he, that day when you went? And you also
Yeah,
saw Travis Head get quite a lot on day two.
on day two, yeah, and um, yeah, that was really really good batting. But as I said, there was some really good cricket. Um, and it was very enjoyable. But so part of the reason I go is to catch up with um, guys that I played, with and against. Certainly in the Sydney Test, it's usually the New South Wales past and current, and so that's good to catch up. And on the second day, I was invited by Cricket New South Wales, and so that was good too to catch up with the administration and some few of the older players that have been involved with cricket in New South Wales for a long time. So it's a good opportunity, and to see some good Test cricket at the same time.
You mentioned him earlier in this episode. You were impressed then by Jacob Bethel, 154.
Yep, definitely. And that was a really really good, solid, good Test match innings, and it was, to me, it was an indication that he's prepared to play Test cricket the way Test cricket needs to be played, and he was prepared to do that. And he's got all the shots, and he appears to have the patience and the determination to build the beginnings. And that's what you need to do. And that's really the support that Joe Root needed right from day one, which he didn't get. But I think Jacob has a good future, and he also showed a little bit of promise with his left arm orthodox spin, and being quite good in the field as well. So yeah, I think he's got a good future.
So overall, the series, were you disappointed with the standard of the series?
At times, um, at times I was, particularly as I mentioned before, the fact that both teams at one time or another had the opposition in trouble, and rather than put the foot on the throat and really press home the advantage, both teams were guilty of letting the other team off the hook a little, and that was generally through their batting in both teams. There were times when the Australian batsmen were guilty of that as well. And so, from that point of view, I was a bit disappointed. Disappointed, obviously, in the two-day Test matches, but enjoyed both Adelaide and Sydney, those Test matches. They were good. And yeah, it's interesting to note that I think it was Joe Root made a comment about, was there a need for day-night Test matches? And I think Steve Smith has actually supported him to a little bit, to a certain extent, and to a certain extent I agree as well. Um, it's it's not um, it's not to me, it's not true Test cricket, because it almost becomes down to um, T20 or 50 over game, that the whole tactics are around, can we get a team to be batting at under lights at night? And there's got to be more to a Test match than that. So you're definitely disadvantaged. Not all the time, but most of the time disadvantaged. If you happen to lose the toss, or circumstances through weather, you're batting under lights, then yeah, it's not really fair conditions for both teams.
Which did happen at Brisbane on day three, because I was there. We lost 6 wickets in a session, and the
You did.
Test match was
Yeah,
lost that night.
yeah, exactly right. And that can happen, and it could have happened to the Australian side. And we've seen it in the past before with day night Test matches, where a match has revolved around what has happened under lights at night, and so that should not be the case.
So, as an Australian, how do England ever win in Australia? We've lost 9 of the last 10 series.
I'm not going to tell you to do that. I don't particularly want that to happen, but I do think, as we commented before, that there has to be better preparation. I know it's difficult in this day and age where there is so much cricket, but and there is so much T20 cricket, and a lot of the players are playing in all sorts of different tournaments, T20 around the world, and so to go into an Ashes series, you need to be more prepared, and not only prepared physically, but also you need to be prepared mentally. And from what I saw of this series, I honestly don't think that there was enough of the England players who were prepared, well, both physically and mentally, for a long, well, in theory, 25 days of high class Test cricket, and you can't prepare for that, no matter how many T20 tournaments you play, or even 50 limited over games you play, because your whole mentality is about, playing in those tournaments. And even the 50-50 game, your whole mentality is that our innings is only going to go 50 overs. So I've got to bat accordingly. But a test series is not like that. You've got to be attuned to bat all day, at least all day. And that certainly didn't happen very often. So I think England, to answer your question, I think there needs to be better preparation, both physically and mentally, before they get here.
Well, next up for England and Australia is the centenary test in March 2027, where hopefully you will return to the MCG 50 years after your famous match.
Yeah, yeah, the 150th test. To be, honest, I'm actually looking forward to it. I hope I can be there. But I noticed that Cricket Australia have already advertised for people who are interested to go into a ballot for tickets. So there will be many, many hundreds of thousands of people who will want to go into that ballot, who want to be there. And so I think it's a wonderful thing to look forward to. Um, we're not obviously not going to get all of both teams there, um, for various reasons, but it will be a good opportunity to catch up with some of the English players and some of our past Australian players, and also some of our current players. Be interesting to see who will actually be playing for England and who will be playing for Australia in March 2027. So there'll be some changes from both teams that played in this series for that one-off test match. But whoever gets to play in it will be an experience that they'll always remember. Certainly for those of us who played in the original centenary test in '77, we'll always remember it.
It will
Some
certainly.
for other reasons other than what's obvious.
It will be a trip down memory lane for you, and because the last one which you were playing in, the likes of Donald Bradman and people like Keith Miller must have been there. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly right. And there'll be a lot of players who won't be there. And I know, from the Australian side, there'll be at least four who played in that test match that who are no longer around, unfortunately. So, and I know there'll be some some of the England team as well. So that's sad and disappointing, but that's life, and that's the way it is.
just moving forward then to the Ashes of 2027. Do you see a much changed Australia team when they come to England?
I hope we'll have two established opening batsmen to start with. I would think that and apart from those two, I think our 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 will probably still be the same. So I don't think there will be too many changes. We don't have a real lot of test matches between now and then. So there'll be some incumbents who will still get another test cap. It'd be interesting to see who the fast bowlers that will go. I can't imagine that the three Stark, Cummins, and Hazelwood would all go. Maybe one or two might. I would be surprised if Cummins doesn't go. I'll be surprised if Stark does. But one would hope. But yeah, we're thinking that Nisa and Boland and at least those couple will go, and there'll be two or three other fast bowlers who will be added to the squad who will be given an opportunity. We're desperately in search of a frontline spin bowler. I think that will need to happen by 2027. So that's, I would say, the core of the squad will be the 12 that finished the fifth test here, but there'll be more added, obviously, and there'll be there'd have to be at least one or two full-time spin bowlers to go over there as well, and another wicketkeeper, whether that's Inglis or I'd imagine he'd be first cab off the rank to support Alex Carey. So I would see probably the 12 that finished would most probably go, and there'll be just with that a few more players added, obviously.
But lots of change in the Australian team over the next 3 or 4 years. There's got to be, isn't there?
It would have to be, yeah, because Steve Smith would probably, I'm sure he would love to go and play the Ashes in 27. And I'm sure he would probably love to play in the 150th in March 27 as well. But who knows with Smithy? You just never know. A few of the players are over 30, but that doesn't mean anything if they're performing and they've still got the hunger. Well, then whether they're 35 or 36, it doesn't matter.
So, final question, can England then win back those Ashes in 2027? You haven't won in England since 2001.
I really think that that England won't win back the Ashes. I can't see it being. I see it being a lot closer than this series, definitely, for sure. But I think both teams have some work to do, but probably more so England. Our batsmen definitely have a bit of work to do, particularly the early order batsmen. But I think we've got a very sound middle order from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think that's a bonus. So I think that Australia would win the series, but it will be a close one. It might even be an even series, but if the weather holds, I could see it being 2-2, maybe 3-2 to one of the sides. But I think it'll be fairly more even than this series that we've just had in Australia.
They normally are in England. The last two have been 2 each. So
yeah. So it could happen. So I think the conditions over there make things a little bit more even. Although quite a few of the Aussie players have spent a bit of time in England, but again, playing county cricket and 2020 is different from playing an Ashes test. And mentally, it's tough over there playing in front of English crowds. So that's something that some of the players would not have experienced. So they've got to come to terms with that, as well as the different conditions. But the weather will play a big part in it. So I know the tours that I did there, the weather was completely different in 75 to 77. And in 75, the weather was pretty much in our favour because it was hot and dry and the wickets were flat. But in 1977, it was wet and cold and the ball was seaming all over the place, and that made it difficult for us. So weather will come into it, but I still think that we can hold the Ashes definitely. Whether we'll win the series, not totally convinced at this stage.
Well, after your prediction of these Ashes, I can't really speak out against what you just said there, because you got it right in the 2025-26 Ashes, and we wait to see what happens in 2027.
Yeah, I have been known to be wrong, Stephen. So you never know.
You never know in cricket. Thank you very much again, Rick, for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, it's always good to chat with you.